Now, Japan, with its advanced economy, is a beautiful country that has its first world standards with some of the world's largest and most modernized neolit cities and its quiet, serene countrysides. All of this is mixed in with its distinct culture, very different from Western norms, and deeply rooted cultural traditions. It's a culture that could fill a lifetime with excitement, making it easy to see why many would like to make it their new homes and choose Japan as a retirement destination. Hello everyone, this is Ronan Blue, and today's topic would be on the 8 best reasons to retire to Japan. Just as a disclaimer, the information provided is a general guide and to be used for educational purposes only. Now, Japan didn't become a popular country for expats for no reason. It has a balance of both worlds, having some of the world's largest cities, but also having its quiet, beautiful countrysides as well, both being potentially satisfying places to live. It's famous for its food, its bullet trains, and has some of the cleanest and litter-free streets in the world. And a lot of the world's favorite pop culture actually comes from Japan. Some strange, but interesting things too. So all these points build up to be a great place to retire, and I can go on, and I will. So let's get into some more detailed points coming now. Number 1. Culture in Japan. Now, Japan has a long history, some saying being one of the oldest cultures in the world that dates back to 30,000 BC. Its traditional culture could be seen in its architecture, its temples, Shinto shrines, and cultures in Kyoto and Nara. It's also famous for its great samurai, ninjas, geishas, tea ceremonies, ancient places, and its lovely gardens. There's actually 18 World Heritage Sites in this small country alone. But we can clearly see today that there's this uniquely interesting blend of the modern and the traditional. It's within their food, fashion, their arts, anime, and even their modern geisha. There's always this constant, unavoidable, rapidly changing, continuously evolving trends into the new, nowhere else seen in the world. You'll see technological advancement mixing in with their cultural traditions, naturally running alongside of it in their daily lives. It could also be said that it's one of the most intellectually stimulating and spiritual countries on this planet. Now, Japan is an archipelago in East Asia that has 6,852 islands. The large islands of Honshu, Hokkaido, Kyushu, and Shikoku make up over 95% of the country's area. Now, Tokyo would be the capital city and one of the most populous in the world, of about 14 million people in its prefecture. But with the greater Tokyo area, it's actually the most populous metropolitan area in the world, with more than 37.3 million residents. It's also a member of the UN, OECD, the G7, G8, and G20. There are also about 2 million expats from around the world living in Japan today, but mostly from neighboring Asian countries. Number 2. Places to live in Japan. Tokyo. As we all know, Tokyo is a hectic and crowded city, and if you're comfortable with a big city living with the hustle and bustle, you'll definitely have a lot to enjoy in terms of entertainment in the city. You'll never run out of things to do. It's for people who like living in the big metropolis with many people, but not really for those that love the quiet and nature. But keep in mind that Tokyo City was actually ranked as the 11th most expensive city for expats, but it was also ranked as being the best overall experience as well, where you can find everything your heart desires. You'll be surrounded with the most modern technologies in the world, constantly evolving. Tokyo is a city that has every comfort you can wish for. All the best and freshest fish and food are brought there first, out of all the places in Japan. Not only does it have the best Japanese food and the freshest of fish, but you'll be able to find food from all over the world as well. That will help out with your occasional homesickness and your food cravings. There are numerous of karaoke bars, world-class cinemas, and game centers to cure any kind of boredom. There are also amusement parks and other attractions that offer art galleries, museums, extensive live music scenes, and world-renowned shopping. If you love shopping, you can do that in the many shopping centers, department stores, and brand shops everywhere around Tokyo. It's a large city with something for every taste. Kyoto. This city is on Japan's largest island, Honshu, and was the previous capital of Japan for centuries. It's said to be one of the most beautiful places in all of Japan, famous for its natural beauty. You'll be able to soak in all the architectural beauty, culture, and history every morning you wake up. It has 2,000 temples and shrines, museums, and botanical gardens. You'll also find geisha districts filled with shops and restaurants and tea houses where the geisha will entertain you with their traditional music and dance. And overall, it's also much cheaper to live in than Tokyo, although not as modern as Tokyo. Okinawa. Now this island in Japan is called the Island of Longevity. Interesting enough, residents suffer from low levels of heart disease, cancer, and dementia. And they're known to be some of the oldest people alive today. Here, the locals have a great social life, unique in having close bonds with each other, and a strong sense of ikigai, which means a unique purpose in life where many even live past the age of 100, believed to be because of this philosophy. They are diet-rich in vegetables and antioxidant foods, and they believe in the importance of reconnecting with nature and surround themselves with people who they love and who stay active. Now, there are U.S. military families stationed in Okinawa as well, who often comment on how kind and helpful local citizens are. But of course, some of the locals are not thrilled with the military base being there. But as long as there is respectful behavior regarding the culture, it serves as a friendly gesture. Number 3. Food in Japan. Ramen. You'll find this at almost every street corner. It's a wheat noodle soup dish and is one of the most popular and inexpensive dishes in Japan. Some saying there are over 350 different tastes around the country. They even have a museum of it. One common taste would be the shoyu ramen noodle soup with chicken, onions, fish balls, seaweed, and cabbage that often contains other meats such as pork, beef, and fish. It usually also contains a hard-boiled egg and different vegetables such as onion, mushrooms, bean sprouts, seaweed, and even corn. Okonomiyaki. Now this is described as being in the middle of a pancake and pizza. It's pan-fried and consists of batter and cabbage. Different kinds of toppings and ingredients are added, anything from sliced meat and seafood to wasabi and cheese. But of course it could be mixed for what you like. Okonomi does mean one's liking, so you choose what to put on it yourself. Sushi. This is a raw fish served on rice, seasoned lightly with vinegar. It's also in a variety of flavors and textures. It could be tangy, creamy, plump, and juicy, and each little piece almost looks like an art. Tokyo has some of the best sushi restaurants in the world. There are all kinds of sushi, sashimi, and nigiri. It's a kind of food that you either really love or hate. There's no neutral ground when it comes to sushi. You'll find the best in the world in Tokyo City. Number 4. Entertainment in Japan. Now everyone loves the Japanese onsen hot spring baths. Japanese people are obsessed with them, and foreigners almost always enjoy the experience, except for some of the rules involved. With volcanic activity, Japan is a hotbed of geothermal activity that created more than 25,000 naturally occurring mineral hot springs that power 3,000 spa resorts across the country. There's also the little gem of a city of Nara, where it feels like you've stepped back in time, wandering between the temples, shrines, and traditional tea houses. It's actually home to 8 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, along with the world's biggest bronze Buddha, a prehistoric rainforest with an old samurai route. You can also go to the Tsukiji market, where there are rows of exceptional sushi restaurants, some of them open 24 hours a day. It's the oldest and biggest fish market in the world, and has become well known with Japan's world-famous food culture. The market handles about 480 types of seafood and about 270 types of produce, both domestic and imported. You can go and climb Mount Fuji as well. You might not always have clear skies, but you'll still get beautiful pictures from the top. There are also many themed restaurants and cafes as well, where many actually don't come for the food, but for the atmosphere. There's the robot restaurants where there are giant robots, kawaii cafes where everything is cute, ninja restaurants where you'll be eating in a village, complete with waterfalls, ponds, and the sounds of chirping crickets, and be entertained by ninja performances at your table. There are hundreds of these different themed restaurants in Japan of every imagination, and you'll never be bored while eating your food. Number 5. Cost of living in Japan. As mentioned earlier, Japan is expensive, especially in Tokyo. But by looking at the overall consumer prices in the United States, they are 14% lower in Japan. So things are actually cheaper in the US. But when it comes to housing costs, Japan is about 32% lower than the United States. So housing is actually cheaper in Japan. The national average housing cost for a one-bedroom apartment in the city center of Japan is about $820 USD per month. In Tokyo, in central Tokyo, rent is about $1,150 USD per month. Outside of the city center, the same apartment in Tokyo would cost about $700 USD per month. But even if the housing costs in Tokyo are inexpensive, the city is still amongst the most expensive in the world. In Tokyo, the average monthly expenses with rent for a single expat would be about $2,200 USD per month. A family of 4 in Tokyo would be about $6,700 USD per month. But there are ways to find cheaper accommodation in Japan if you choose to live in other cities other than Tokyo. You can get shared rooms for a minimum of $310 USD to around $530 USD for a single room in a shared house, to an average of $730 USD for a small single apartment in the city center not in Tokyo. And outside the city center would be about $470 USD per month. Rent for a 3-bedroom apartment in city center would be $1,460 per month, and outside the city center would be about $890 USD per month. But living in the more convenient areas of Tokyo could be about 30% to 40% increase in rent. So that means that cities other than Tokyo could be around 30 to 50% lower. Utilities are electricity, gas, and water, and could be upwards of about $106 USD to $168 per month. Internet subscriptions are very fast and affordable. A fiber optic connection costs about $26 USD to $53 USD per month based on the bandwidth. Dining out in Japan could sometimes be more affordable than cooking at home. A lot of people actually eat out every day in Tokyo because it's cheap, fast, and there are no dirty dishes to clean afterwards. Time is more important than the cost in most cases. Some even eat at convenience stores, bentos, Japanese home-packed meals, a meal that will cost you roughly $4 USD. There are also many Japanese fast food restaurants or small shops selling set meals for around $7 to $9 USD as well. A meal for 2 people at a mid-range restaurant would be around $35. But just to make mention, the average monthly cost of living for the Japanese for a household with 2 or more people is about $3,625 per month. And this would include consumption expenditures like food, utilities, and clothing, and non-consumption expenditures like payroll taxes. This monthly amount doesn't include their rent or a mortgage, however. Now for transportation, if you have a job, to and from the company is covered in full by the company. Many say it doesn't make sense to own a car in Tokyo if you aren't super wealthy, and so most people use trains and the metro to get around. There's also a consumption tax of 8%, but also for Social Security and income tax is 20 to 30%. And although it's difficult to get a permanent resident visa or a long-term visa in Japan, which I'll talk about in more detail later, if you do get one, you'll be subject to these taxes. But if you're a non-resident and have a 1-year visa, you'll only pay taxes on income earned in Japan. If you're a non-permanent resident living in Japan for less than 5 years, you'll pay income taxes on all of your income except foreign income that does not get sent to Japan. If you're a permanent resident, you'll pay taxes on all income earned in Japan and abroad. So if you're planning on moving to Tokyo, it could be considered expensive, so you'll need to make sure you have enough savings before coming. About 5 times that of monthly rent and expenses and other items would be recommended. Number 6, buy property in Japan. Japan is one of the most easiest places to buy property as a foreigner. The property regulations are foreign friendly and you have no restrictions to buy land as well. But it's always best to get a reputable real estate agent to help you out. So it is possible for you to buy that traditional Japanese house in the countryside if you wanted. The problem would be that the value of the Japanese home doesn't seem to hold up. Newly built homes in Japan quickly lose their building value, often becoming disposable and fit for demolition after only 30 years or so. And most people don't want to buy these old homes. Japan's rapidly declining population in the next 50 years also means that the outlook for real estate prices is unclear. But if you're not worried about your investment potentially going down in property, then it shouldn't really matter. Number 7, healthcare in Japan. Now, the Japanese public healthcare system is consistently ranked in the top 10 healthcare systems in the world by the World Health Organization. It's based on efficiency, quality, responsiveness, and actually pays for 70% of healthcare costs for residents and actually pays more for low-income residents. Anyone who legally lives in Japan for over 1 year can enroll themselves in the National Health Insurance or Employees Health Insurance programs. When you're insured, you will only have to pay 30% of your medical expenses. The typical cost for a doctor's visit with insurance will run you about $50 to $100 out of pocket. But it's actually mandatory to be enrolled in the Japanese health insurance system if you're residing in Japan longer than 3 months. This is even if you have travel insurance or are covered by your insurance back home. Some people still don't pay, however, even if it's mandatory. But if you're working, your job probably has you enrolled in the company's Shakai Hoken insurance. Your health insurance as well as your pension gets directly deducted from your pay. You then enroll yourself into Japan's national health insurance, Kokumin Kenko Hoken, where you can apply from your local city hall. Number 8. How to live in Japan. Now, it's made easy for many to enter Japan, especially Americans, to enter as tourists. Americans can enter Japan without a visa and are able to stay up to 90 days visa-free within a 183-day period and are assigned temporary visitor status. This is a single-entry visa, but tourists can apply for 2 trips within 6 months if they wanted to. But if you wanted to stay longer than 90 days, you'll need to get a working visa or a spouse visa. This means you must either work in Japan or marry a Japanese citizen. But for those who are set on the idea of retiring abroad in Japan without a work visa, there seems to be 2 main options. First way would be by using a family or spousal visa. This is if you are married to a Japanese citizen or permanent resident, or if you have immediate family in Japan with citizenship or permanent residency. The second way to retire would be to get consecutive 1-year visas. There are several non-working visas, and to reside long-term in Japan, you'll need to undergo an entire process annually until permanent residency can be achieved in about 6 to 10 years. The long stay visa lasts 3 more years. After the first 6 years, you can apply to become a Japanese permanent resident, but you need to go through a testing process to prove that you are fluent in Japanese and have a strong understanding of Japanese culture. The visa requires a certificate of eligibility from the Ministry of Justice, and you must meet several points of the Immigration Control Act. There's also the long stay visa for the high net worth individual. This would be under the category of the non-working visa that allows for citizens from over 50 countries with positive relations to Japan to receive a 1-year permit if they can prove savings of over 265,000 USD. This is so wealthy foreigners may inject money into the economy with certain preferential treatment and faster processing and could be applied for before entering Japan. Now, the Japanese lifestyle might seem like a very attractive location for your overseas retirement, but in reality, at present, there is unfortunately no specific retirement visa available for foreign nationals to reside in the country without working. Obtaining a work visa in Japan is the easiest way to become a full-time resident in the country, and there are 20 categories you can choose from for your particular situation, and they are usually permits for 1 year and can be renewed for various lengths depending on your working status. But the Japanese work visa is primarily reserved for degree-holding professionals or those with significant success in their fields. General entry-level labor jobs, waitresses, retail clerks, tour guides, bartenders, do not qualify for these visas. To work legally in Japan, you'll need to do so under a different form of visa, usually as part-time work for students, spouses of Japanese citizens, or those with non-working visas. There's a bunch of other items as well that are all listed over your government website, publicly available for your viewing. Too many points to mention here. But Japan doesn't have an investor visa, golden visa, like many EU and Central South American nations do, granting immediate residency, citizenship, or immigration perks. It does have a business manager visa that provides a way to legally live and work in Japan, which could be applied for by your company of employment, but you'll need to have a title as a owner, president, CEO, operating manager, or a high-ranking position. Now, this is the bonus section for those that have come all the way here. The pros and cons of living in Japan, starting with the pros. Food quality. Overall, the food quality is very high in Japan, and there is very little risk of foodborne illness. It's healthy, tastes great, and is fun to eat. There are a variety of foods to eat, and compared to the average American diet, the average Japanese diet is much healthier. It's definitely a large part of why Japanese people live so long, and it's so much more than just sushi too. The cuisine in Japan is replicated all over the world, and for good reason. Japanese food is delicious and extremely healthy. The island nation has an abundance of fresh food and also has delicacies like the Kobe beef. Many of Tokyo's restaurants recently were given more Michelin stars than those in Paris. Climate. It being a small island, Japan has an incredibly diverse natural landscape. The north area has harsh, cold winters and warm summers. The central highland has a humid and continental climate with some precipitation but heavy snowfall in the winter. The Pacific coast of Japan has a humid subtropical climate with warm winters and hot, humid summers. It also even has the snow-capped mountains, the sunny beaches, and the Pacific wind routes. The shopping and convenience stores. You can find almost anything in convenience stores. They are also always clean and well-serviced. The shopping centers are just as nice as most modern nations. The majority of Japan's cities are home to major shopping centers where you can find just about anything you're looking for in any part of Japan. Getting a job. Getting a teaching job is probably the easiest way to get yourself over to Japan. There's a constant demand for people to teach English to Japanese students. So if you're a Westerner who's fluent in English, you can very easily get a job as a teacher in Japan. You also get living quarters provided to you, and you get a steady job and a paycheck. The JET program guide is a good place to start. Public transport. The Japanese transportation system is superior. Their subway and train systems are clean, fast, reliable, on time, and getting around the country is easy. The bus system is great as well. It has this integrated system making it easy and simple to travel around. It'll make you feel like you won't need a car at all, and the Japanese love their trains as well. Educational system. Japan provides a world-class education to all students, whether they attend free, public school, or private international school. Their educational system is actually ranked among the best in the world. Health insurance. Japan has universal public health care, meaning everyone who lives there is automatically covered. The system is paid for through monthly premiums, and people pay 30% of their medical costs out of pocket. The state actually invested in keeping healthcare affordable, and rarely do healthcare costs cause hardship for people living in Japan. Working visas. There are a lot of different kinds of work visas, even temporary visas. The process of applying for a visa without a corporate sponsor is still complex, but generally pretty open to allow foreign talent to work within its borders. Clean environment. You'll find Japan to be very clean. The streets, the homes, the everything. Students from when they are young learn or disciplined to clean their environment like their own schools, and this habit is brought with them into adulthood. Now let's talk about the cons. Earthquake and natural disasters. Now there are earthquakes and other natural disasters. Although it's not something that happens every day, it's important to be aware that they do happen. Fire is also a threat, especially after a natural disaster in Japan, especially during an earthquake. Now Japan does experience earthquakes quite often within its borders. That could also trigger tsunamis as well, so there's nothing you can do to control them, so natural disasters is just a part of life in Japan. The food. Although this was mentioned as a pro, it could also be seen as a con as well. Seafood and rice is not for everyone, especially if you're not used to it, and it could make you unhappy in the longer term. But there are selections of fast food, but it's not really the same, and it's more expensive compared to some of the local foods available. Living quarters. Everything is small in Japan. You might even hit your head here and there until you get used to it. Hallways and stairways may be narrow and slippery as well. If you decide to live in the rural areas, you might get lucky to find a place of decent size, but most often you'll be housed in a place a bit smaller than what you're used to from where you're watching this vlog from. Central air and heating are not common as well. It's cold inside the home during the winter season, and you'll need to get a portable heater that may be of annoyance. Working is stressful. People in Japan work very hard. Some people stay at work for 15 hours every day. It's great to be able to find a job, but the work-life balance is off. People have no time to see their families, and it's not weird for kids to almost never see their own father. Many come 15 minutes early and stay 90 minutes late every day. It's expected that if you're sick, you can use a vacation day rather than a sick day. Japanese people are overworked and under social pressure, and often not too relaxed. Prejudice against foreigners. This depends on the people you're with and the area you live in. It also depends on the age of the Japanese people you're around, as the younger crowd seems to be much more tolerant of foreigners. In less populous cities, some bars and restaurants will go as far as to deny service to foreigners. While xenophobia of that extreme is getting less common in Japan, it does still exist in some places, and you may experience it while you're there. And being a foreigner in Japan, no matter how long you live in Japan, you will never be Japanese. You will always feel isolated and called gaijin, meaning an outsider. Being a migrant does have its advantages, but also its obstacles. You'll sometimes be asked about when you're returning back to your country. It's something a foreigner should know and understand before coming to Japan to avoid disappointment. It basically means the Japanese will treat you differently, of course, because you are different. They'll comment on how good your Japanese is or your skills with chopsticks and other such superficial comments. It does get annoying after a while, but it's better to just get used to it fast and say thank you and smile. Cost of living. If you want to live anywhere near a city center in Japan, rent will be much higher. The cost of living in Japan has long been one of the highest in the world, and although the country has become more affordable in recent years, it's still not the cheapest place to call home. Living spaces in Japan are much smaller as well than in many other parts of the world, even if it's a little more affordable. Due to the living costs, if you don't have a well-paying job, you might not be able to afford a comfortable place in the city center and have to commute to work for an hour or more. Renting can be difficult for foreigners. Now, apartments in Japan are typically rented through brokers, but many brokers don't speak English. So even if you find a perfect apartment, you may not be able to rent it without hiring a translator. A lot of landlords would rather not rent to foreigners as well, and others may be willing, but require what's called the reiking, or a gift of 1 or 2 months of rent up front, if the apartment is in a popular neighborhood with high demand. Complex chores. To open a bank account in Japan, you have to be a resident and have proof of your residence, as well as your passport and Japanese visa. You also need to obtain a hand-carved hanko seal, which is a stamp used in place of a signature on official documents. Malechauvinism. Gender inequality in Japan is a huge issue. It's in the Japanese mindset, politics, education, and economics. Some say it comes from the ancient samurai times with the Bushido Code. Both historically and culturally speaking, because of this, you're not going to see a lot of women CEOs and women politicians. As a female, you may be incredibly depressed at some point as an independent female living in Japan and may start losing gender equality in society. Crowded. Not only are the trains crowded, but also many areas around Tokyo that you might be interested in visiting during the weekends are always busy with tourists and locals alike. If you don't like crowds, living in large cities like Tokyo may be quite stressful. Making friends. If you have a job, you'll make friends with some of your colleagues, which is quite easy, but making friends with Japanese outside of work could be tricky. You'll need to join some activities where you can meet Japanese people, like sports circles. There are couch surfing events where you'll meet Japanese people who are interested in meeting foreigners as well. Image of anime. Many people have this image of Japan being like what they see in media, especially in anime and manga. Japan is definitely not like this and has both its bad side but its good side as well. So never believe what you see on TV as the truth. But retiring in Japan has its challenges. First off, it doesn't have a formal retirement visa plan, and the only options really is to get either a work visa or a spouse visa. Getting a permanent visa also takes from 3 to 10 years, depending on your situation, and requires an intimate knowledge of the Japanese language and culture, or having close to 300,000 USD in a savings account, only allowing you to stay for a year. Another point would be the high cost of living in Japan, especially Tokyo, that could be said to have one of the highest cost of livings in the world. But many expats from all over the world are still drawn to this beautiful, vibrant, and culturally rich island nation and wouldn't consider retiring anywhere else. It's a stunning destination and highly sought for by many Americans who want to retire abroad. It's just that it's very difficult to gain residency in Japan, and if you do, it could be a great place to retire. The healthcare is one of the best in the world, plenty of great food, and overall the people are a bit stressed but very friendly when they open up to you. Well, tell me what you think of retiring in Japan in the comment section below. If you like this vlog, please don't forget to give me a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell for more of my coming content here. Thank you for watching my vlog. Be free, gain wealth, and travel far.